snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books.
Hi guys! So I'm here today to do a book review, and the book I'm going to be reviewing is one that I had on my most anticipated books of the year list, so I was very eager to get to this one. Unfortunately, I was not impressed, and the book I'm talking about is All the Birds in the Sky, which is by Charlie Jane Anders. Now, this book I read with Eleanor, and both of us agreed that we really enjoyed the beginning section of this book. It started out fantastically well, it was really interesting, we were loving the characters, loving the way it was written, and then the second half happened, and the second half was a real disappointment for me. The second half felt a lot less interesting than the first, it felt a lot less developed, a lot less explained. It just didn't come together in the way I was hoping for, and I sometimes think that if you start a book and you have really great hopes because of how well it begins and it goes downhill, it's much worse than a book starting out a bit rubbish and finishing off really good. So it was a disappointment. I was definitely disappointed by this book. I read an interview with this author and I really enjoyed the author interview as well. So it's not the author I dislike, I just think maybe this suffers from being a debut book because it just didn't work in the end for me. So, as I said, the beginning was really good, and in the beginning we meet two characters. The first one is called Patricia, and she's a young girl who is told that she is a witch by a tree. A tree literally tells her, "You're a witch." She's led to the tree by a bird, and it's all very bizarre, and it's all very magical realism, and it's all fantastic. I really enjoyed the first opening scenes with her, and seeing her character as a young, naive, funny little child who's just wanting to explore, wanting to imagine, and wanting to be free and fun. We also meet Lawrence. Now, Lawrence is a young boy, and he is very interested in sort of science and technology. He's very clever, and he wants to design and create an artificial intelligence, so he's been working on an artificial intelligence program since he was pretty young. We follow him as he has made this kind of AI intelligent program, and he is trying to develop it so that it becomes something great. Together, both of them are kind of like the misfits within school, particularly Patricia, because she makes herself into a bit of a target by being quite odd and acting in some peculiar ways, and so they become friends kind of more through default rather than an actual friendship with each other, but they do develop that friendship as time goes on, and they start to spend more time together, and they realise that actually they are fairly similar in some ways, even though Lawrence is a little bit resistant to believing that. Patricia is much more kind and she wants to be friends with him, and she believes that they are great friends. He's not as sure as she is. Then things start to get a little bit weird. We see some more characters come into the story, we see different plots starting to open up, particularly concerning a assassin type character, and we get a few shifts forwards in time. I definitely felt as though those shifts forwards in time were handled pretty poorly. I didn't feel like we got a real explanation of what happened during the time that we skipped, and so the characters that we met in the first part of the book did not feel like the same characters we then encountered in the second part of the book. I felt like they went from young, childish, excitable, fun characters who had big imaginations and wild dreams into these quite dull, quite antisocial, quite nasty characters in the second half. They just didn't feel as genuine as people. They felt quite forced as characters. They felt as though they weren't real. And I just think they lost a lot of the appeal that they had in the first part, which was really disappointing. It just felt as though the naive young characters and the innocence that they had was completely lost, and they didn't grow into grown-ups so much as suddenly become one. I didn't feel like the narrative voice got any older or more sophisticated. I felt as though we were still in quite a young, childlike tone, even though they were now supposed to be adults, and I didn't feel like that worked. It just didn't click with the story for me. In terms of the plot, the second half completely lost me. Not in that it was confusing, it wasn't particularly confusing, it was more just boring. Like, I didn't care about the second half. I wanted to see these characters go to wizard school and learn to become a super genius. I didn't see that. I actually saw them just go from normal school being friends to, oh, we're adults now, and that's it. we missed the exciting bit, we missed the bit that could have been so good, and I didn't like that. Some of the plots introduced I felt were totally unnecessary, I didn't feel like we needed them. Equally, they could have been interesting if they'd had more development on them, but I didn't feel like we got that either, so it just felt a little bit redundant to me. I don't really know what she was trying to do in the second half of this book. I feel like it had such promise and it was wasted. In terms of writing, this book does try to do some interesting things with the tropes from both science fiction and fantasy. We see magic and technology kind of clashing together, which is interesting to see, and I think there are so many good ideas in this that just were not pulled through and weren't realised as well as they could have been. So that was a quite a disappointment for me. Overall, I'm definitely left feeling disappointed after reading this, and I don't want to feel that way because I wanted to love this. I'm very sad that I didn't, because I think it had a lot of potential and I wish I had really enjoyed the second half. I know some people do like it a lot and some people don't. It seems like it's a bit of a Marmite book and you either love it or hate it sort of thing. I wouldn't say I hated it. I think it was a very readable book and it was quite easy to get through. I got through it pretty quick. It didn't go the way I wanted and it didn't turn into the story I thought it could be, so that was sad. I ended up giving this a 2.5 out of 5 stars. It's not the worst book I've ever read, and I think it's better than okay because of the first half, which I did really, really enjoy. But the second half just really brought it down for me, and I just can't give it any higher than a 2.5. It doesn't get on that 3 level, because although I really liked part 1, part 2 was just bad. So yeah, sadly I can only give it a 2.5. But I would love to hear what you guys think. And as I said, I know a lot of people do really like this, so I would be interested to hear why you really like it and whether you got on better with the second half than I did. Do let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.